The release of previously classified surveillance applications, or so-called FISA warrants, by the Justice Department over the weekend set off a new round of political fighting over the FBI's monitoring of former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page.
The FISA applications were appropriately put before the court, and they were appropriately approved. The information that was used in part in the FISA application came from a trusted source, Christopher Steele, someone who is a respected member of British intelligence.
We finally have a copy of the FISA warrant application that allowed the Obama administration to spy on the Trump campaign in 2016. That document is heavily redacted, but certain facts are clear. The clearest of all, the Obama administration argued with a straight face that Carter Page was a secret agent working for the Russians. This is absurd, and yet it was widely believed in Washington. Watch this.
There was a very clear belief that Carter Page was conspiring with Russia in ways that were nefarious.
There was overwhelming evidence to have probable cause to do surveillance on Carter Page. It would have been a dereliction of duty for our FBI not to have sought a surveillance warrant.
As you say, it makes a compelling case that there is probable cause to believe that Carter Page was acting as an agent of a foreign power.
A compelling case, really? Well, if it's so compelling, why aren't we hearing that case in court at Carter Page's treason trial? Well, because it's total nonsense. It's a bad joke. The FISA application doesn't even begin to prove that Carter Page betrayed his country in any way. But the application does prove other things. We now know, for example, conclusively, that the discredited Steele dossier was central to the Obama administration's request to spy on the Trump campaign. Former FBI Director Jim Comey has publicly denied that, perhaps assuming the actual request would never be released. Comey claimed that the dossier was not a significant part of the government's request, and that turns out to be a lie. Not only did the Obama administration use the Steele dossier as the basis of its spying request, it appears the FBI did essentially nothing to verify the claims of the dossier, despite the fact they knew it was a partisan document paid for by political operatives, the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC. It was too good to check, apparently. Instead of sending its own agents to run down the facts, which of course it could have done, in fact it exists to do, the FBI instead cited a Yahoo News article to prove that the dossier was reliable. The only problem with that, the Yahoo piece was itself based on leaked information from Steele. You'd have to be utterly incompetent to do something like that, or totally dishonest. Meanwhile, the man identified by the Obama administration as a Russian agent walks free tonight. He is a living rebuke to this whole grotesque hoax. He is Carter Page, and he joins us live tonight. Carter Page, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
So this application repeatedly describes you as an agent of the Russian government, repeatedly. Are you aware of any criminal charges pending against you? Do you expect to be charged for working for the Russian government?
Not only am I not aware of it, Tucker, there's also the fact that no question I've ever been asked by the FBI in terms of any of these fake theories related to the dossier, as you're alluding to. None of those made any sense whatsoever. So there's not even a premise by which I could even conceivably be charged. So it's absolutely ridiculous.
And yet there are specifics from the dossier. Apparently, this comes from the dossier, but the application accuses you of meeting with two Russian officials, both named Igor Sechin and Igor Divyakin. Did you meet with either one of those men?
I never met with them in my life, ever. Yep.
Do you believe that allegation comes from the Steele dossier?
Absolutely. It's funny, in July of 2016, 2 months before the Yahoo News article came out, I started getting these calls from various news reporters, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, all asking me about these same two names of people I've never even heard of in my, I had heard of Sechin, I never even heard of Divyakin. And so it was obvious, and some people told me from the media that they heard about it from the Clinton campaign, et cetera, but, so finally they found someone to put it out in 45 days before the election in Yahoo News, so.
One of the reasons I find this story so fascinating is because you are an actual person, an American, a Naval Academy graduate, and you're willing to talk in public. Your government, on the basis of no actual evidence, has accused you of treason and spied on you as a result. I mean, how does that, as someone who served your country in the military as a naval officer, how does that make you feel? My bigger concern is the complete failure of the U.S. intelligence community in terms of looking at this Russia issue. If this is what they're using... Well, it sounds like they succeeded, actually. I don't know if it's a failure. They had a very specific goal in mind, and they've achieved it. That's why we're talking about it today. They've hamstrung the workings of government for a year and a half. Carter Page, you're a lot more forgiving than I would be.
The Department of Justice released a heavily redacted FISA court request by the FBI asking for permission to surveil or listen into Carter Page. I know you read this months ago, but it's the first time one of these kind of documents is out in the public domain. Even heavily redacted. What is your take on this?
My take is that Carter Page is more like Inspector Gadget than he is Jason Bourne or James Bond.
No, it's easy for Mr. Gowdy to try to diminish Carter Page, but he was one of only 5 of Donald Trump's foreign policy advisors during the campaign.
Here's what we'll never know, Brett. We'll never know whether or not the FBI had enough without the dossier, the unvetted DNC-funded dossier, because they included it. And everyone who reads this FISA application sees the amount of reliance they placed on this product funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign and the DNC.
You called the dossier unverified, salacious. Why did you use that to the FISA court to ask for surveillance for Carter Page? Not only use it, but you led with it. A bulk of that FISA application deals with that dossier. Why?
Yeah, that's not my recollection, Brett. My recollection was there was a significant amount of additional material about Page and why there was probable cause to believe he was an agent of a foreign power. And the dossier was part of that, but was not all of it or a critical part of it.
I think Congress ought to ask the people who drafted the FISA response why they deliberately left out the fact that the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee paid for the Steele dossier.
I think they did it because, number one, the FISA stuff is classified, and number two, they were sure Hillary was going to win, and no one was ever going to be any the wiser.
I have not seen one scintilla of evidence that this president colluded, conspired, confederated with Russia. And neither has anyone else, or you may rest assured Adam Schiff would have leaked it.
In a series of tweets, President Trump said the release confirms that the Justice Department misled the courts in order to spy on his campaign.
President Trump should sign a note completely eliminating the redactions and release the paper. There is no reason for him to not just go ahead and do it. Get it over with.
The president needs to declassify these documents. The American people need to know the truth. And the FBI, the CIA, and our intelligence apparatus needs to be overhauled. They need to take a look at this. This needs to change, and this abuse of power needs to stop.
Yeah. Congressman? I'd also get rid of the Attorney General. The Attorney General is there in name only. I like Jeff Sessions when he was the senator, but as the Attorney General, he is non-existent for many of these discussions. And until the president puts in an Attorney General who will actually do his job, I think the deep state is going to continue to move forward and work its will.
The only thing that is going to clean up Washington is the fresh air of accountability, transparency, and honesty.
I'm struck by the treatment that Carter Page has received in the press. Here's a guy who's not been charged with any crime. There's no credible evidence he betrayed his country. He's been accused of treason by his own government and spied upon, and yet the reservoir of sympathy for him seems very shallow. No one seems to care. Why is that?
Because in our partisan world, the presumption of innocence only applies to your side, not the other side. Democrats and people on the left forget the presumption of innocence. They're prepared to argue that a search warrant is proof of guilt or an indictment is proof of guilt. For example, the indictment of the 12 Russians who will never be brought to trial is taken as containing the truth. They're just allegations. It may very well be that they're guilty, and we know there was intrusion or an attempt to intrude on the election, but we have to remember the presumption of innocence. It doesn't only apply to your side of the political spectrum.
That's exactly right.